Hello and welcome. I'm Beth Cougler Blom, and this is Facilitating on Purpose. I'm so glad you're here. In this episode, I'm bringing to you a conversation I had with Nora Sheffe, a fellow Canadian. I won't say too much more than that because I do ask her a little bit about herself and she introduces herself at the start of our conversation. So I'll just leave it there about who Nora is. Generally, we talk about using visuals in facilitation though. So if you're someone that gets excited about graphics and icons and visuals, and you're wondering how to do this more in your facilitation work or why you would ever do such a thing, this is a great episode for you to listen to. We talk about in-person and online use of visuals. We talk about expanding visual facilitation beyond the use of drawings and so much more. So happy to bring this conversation with Nora Sheffe to you. I hope you enjoy the show. Nora, so nice to see you again. Thanks for coming to have this chat with me today.
Thanks, Beth. It's great to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely. I was so happy to see you in the event that we were in together the other day. And I was just thinking in the days, coming up to this recording that I've talked to so many people in different parts of the world recently. And at one point I thought, I really should ask another Canadian to be on the show because there are great facilitators here as well. So happy, to have you along.
Yeah, thank you so much. And speaking of great facilitators, we're so fortunate in Canada to have very active group and community of facilitators that are so generous with their time. So I'll mention a number of people today that I've learned from and that I appreciate their generosity of mentoring me and teaching me things and sharing their knowledge.
Oh, please do. I love that. And then we'll find them and, put them in the show notes so other people can find them as well. But I know I have Manal Sayid coming up on the podcast. So I don't know, you probably know Manal because you're in the same city, I think.
Yes. We've had the privilege of working together and she's terrific.
That's fantastic. Great. Well, so happy to have you here. And I thought maybe we could just start with a little bit of your facilitation experience. Not that I'm asking you for your resume or to justify anything Nora, to me, but where's your current love in the facilitation world right now? What do you spend most of your time doing as a facilitator?
Yeah, so I'd say I balance my time. So I love working with clients on complex projects. So that hasn't changed, whether it's within women's health space, whether it's in higher education, whether it's in sport. So we work with a number of different sectors. So that's really interesting to me because the problems feel different with different cultures and different people. The other thing that I really love, and that's been more a focus in the last few years, is working with a bigger team. So I've had the privilege of hiring team members, and we've got team members who are earlier in their career. So it's terrific to get to learn from them and to put them in opportunities where they get to learn and explore and get their own facilitation voice. So really, it's still working with clients and building team members' skills and expertise.
That's so great. And maybe that's a good thing for people to realize because I think they could probably follow you on LinkedIn to watch a little bit of your work leading that team because some of us have small teams and then some of us work alone and to have a team that I think is as large as yours. I saw the team photo on your website. How many consultants do you have working with you right now?
We have 10 and some of those are associates and some of those are full-time. And then we're grateful to have people outside of our kind of immediate geography as well that we work with on projects when we need to travel to other countries. So we have associates that we know we can call on and partner with. So we're grateful for that bigger group, even beyond the people that would be photoed on the website.
Yeah, that's good to know. And way to go for building, that team that's that, minimum size, which is not very minimum, but then beyond as well. I mean, that's a feat in itself.
Thank you. It took me a long time as a facilitator to realize that facilitation is my first passion, but to realize that I'm also running a business. And when I made that mind shift of, right, I'm running a business, I need to compete for proposals, I need to do all of the financial pieces, all of that, that really helped me understand that there's two parts. A part that I love is facilitation, and then the part that I need to do in order to do what I love. So it's been an evolution for me, but I feel like I've got my feet are a little more firmly on the ground in these current years.
Yeah. That's so common in entrepreneurship, isn't it? It's the running the business piece that sometimes is surprising, but we're really here to talk about you as a facilitator. I mean, it's lovely that you're this, big business owner, but you as a facilitator and as a visual facilitator in particular. Have you been working with visuals for your whole career as a facilitator, or did you come to it, in the last several years? What was it that started your foray into visual facilitation?
Yeah, so I'd say I've always been intrigued by visuals and seeing some incredible graphic facilitators and just being awestruck by their artistic gifts and their ability to capture what the group is saying. So I feel like I was at a conference maybe 15 or 20 years ago. I had never heard of graphic facilitation. So watching them, I was just mesmerized. I felt that it was really inaccessible, though. I don't identify as someone that draws or has artistic skills, but I really appreciated it. But two things were important to me rethinking this or understanding it differently is I used to think that using visuals was drawing, and now I think of it as much more than just pen on paper and drawing. So that was an important shift. And the other important shift for me was that I didn't see it as part of my skill set. I don't have natural ability. It's very much that I've gone to training and learned from people, that I've built a very small repertoire of things that I can do, but it's rethinking what visual facilitation can look like and what my skill set can look like. So I can still show up as my authentic self, but it's different than those brilliant graphic facilitators. So I don't feel like that's now the bar or the expectation. I can do things in a way that allows people to benefit from visuals without me feeling like I don't have the skills to pull it off.
That's so important that you said that. And I've heard other facilitator friends say that as well, where they really do. I make an awful pun, sort of unintended, but now I'm realizing I'm about to say it. They draw a line between the person who is a graphic recorder or graphic facilitator and then using visuals in facilitation or being a visual facilitator. That it's something I've heard before, and it makes it more accessible to all of us who aren't artists, right?
Exactly. So whether it's using really simple manipulables, could be using Post-it notes in a different way, giving people Sharpies, sharing the markers with people to allow everyone to feel like we're co-creating something. We use playing cards. So that now fits into my definition of using visuals. So if we're getting in groups, I've pre-counted the deck. So everybody that has diamonds is in this group. Everyone with hearts is in another group. So it's simple, it's fun, it's accessible. It's something maybe people haven't done before that gives some intrigue and interest into a meeting. So that now fits in my definition of visual facilitation the way it wouldn't have years ago.
Okay, yeah, that's a good distinction to make. And just last week, I was also using visuals. So I have the Visual Explorer card deck. You probably know that one.
Okay, yes.
And I bought it actually a bunch of years ago, and it was the first time I used it last week because it's just one of those things that has been sitting in my, my cupboards here that you can't see on my video. But it was something that the group, I don't think they'd seen it before, but we think, oh, visuals, like you pick up a visual and then talk to a partner about it. It's so almost elemental for some of us, but the group, it's still new to them and they really liked it. Of course, it gave them something to talk about right away, holding that visual in their hand.
Yes. And to your point, it feels a little bit different or novel, or maybe the card's a different card than they had seen. And so many things, and I've learned this again from a number of people that post on LinkedIn and some of the people that really work in the space of virtual facilitation, that so many of the things that we do in an in-person meeting can have a digital application. So whether it's hybrid, which are tough settings, some people online, some in person, or all virtual, you still can have these elements of visuals in those settings as well.
Okay, well, let's make sure we talk about both. Maybe we can sort of start with in person, and then we'll make sure we talk about online as well, because I know it is probably the more challenging mode for people to sort of expand their thinking around visuals in.
Yeah,
Yeah,
happy to
yeah.
do that.
Where did you get your start? Did you take a course in visual facilitation or graphic recording? Were there mentors that you had along the way in this particular aspect?
Yeah, so it happened pre-pandemic. Bikablo is a German company, and I think we'll make sure that we spell that out for people because it's not actually a German word. I thought it was a word, and it's the company name. So Martin Haussmann is the founder, and he's published books, and they do terrific training. They either online or in person, so they have a number of different workshops. So I attended a workshop for 2 days, and it was everything from using basic lines and shapes that we all know how to make and putting them together into icons, and how to use color intentionally on flip charts, some basics around lettering. So that was the first foray, I would say, into visual facilitation. And I said earlier, I didn't identify as being an artist, but at the end of 2 days, I thought, everything that Frank Wesseler, in this case, a German, has taught me, I can do in real time. I won't do it as quickly as he does it or as beautifully, but I can do it in a way that feels accessible and that really elevates my flip chart game and my visual game. So he's one really important person. And I feel like so many of these people opened a door, and imagine like walking through a door and seeing this whole world that I didn't know existed. So it felt like, okay, wow, that was an important threshold. And a second one is Heather Martinez. She is a brilliant letterer. I didn't know this world of lettering. So she combines kind of graffiti art and calligraphy and has formed this fantastic following. And she teaches online, she teaches in-person courses. I had the privilege of going to this unique place in New Mexico called the Ghost Ranch, and got to spend 6 days with Heather learning from her. And it was, just a fantastic immersive experience. So again, that was another big opening the door. I had no idea this world existed, and it was equal parts fun and then applicable to my business. So it was so many great things in a single experience.
Wow, that makes me want to go. Does she still do that? 6 days to do that?
Yeah,
That's
it was
amazing.
fantastic. And to carve that out, like for me as a small business owner, to give myself permission to go to that. But it's one of those experiences that I look back to as I'm so grateful that I made the effort to go to New Mexico, to be in the desert. The surrounding was, part of the experience. We got to hike up to the mesas in the morning and kind of experience parts of the desert in that part of the world. So
wow, that sounds magical. I'll see if she's got anything coming up to in the Bikablo pieces as well. We'll make sure we put some of their current offerings in the show notes for everyone else. Yeah, I had a similar experience. I took graphic recording, I think in 2012, with Christina Merkley, who I think still lives here in Victoria, and she had worked at the Grove Consultants down in the States. So it was same thing, 3-day immersion, and funnily enough, my dad came and did the workshop with me, and he came from Ontario, came out here to BC, and we did the 3-day workshop together. And it was just a special experience, not only learning from Christina and just realizing that we too could be the quote unquote artists, right? We're not artists, but just that it was all accessible to us, as you've said, but that I did it with my dad as well. It was so amazing.
Yes. And there's a few things. So I was trying to get to the Grove, and they now offer more workshops in more parts of the world, which is terrific. But this notion of templates was something that Grove did very well, very early on. And I've seen that notion of template show up in different ways. Abby Wilkymacky out of Arizona did a workshop that I attended recently, and she takes templates to a whole new level. So it can be a participant introduction template where she's drawn something fun and inviting. Where are you from? What would a food be? If I visited your city, what food should I eat? What tourist places should I visit? What's a favorite movie? So simple questions, but the way that she drew it graphically instantly pulls you into this introduction activity. So it's different than the Grove uses templates of visioning or strategic planning and kind of the process, and even seeing templates used on a much smaller scale. So again, that was another door opening of how can this notion of templates be applied in our business and our facilitation to bring value to our clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, we get to go shop for fun supplies too, don't we? Because, now we all have the humongous rolls of graphic chart paper to be able to do those big templates and so on. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
What's the range that you do? Like, you mentioned sticky notes, you mentioned just, bringing in visuals that are card decks or that kind of thing. You use templates, it sounds like. Are there other kind of aspects of visuals that you want to mention that what's the range of what you do?
It varies based on the project. So I always try to have visuals as part of what I'm doing, but it will vary based on what it is. So sometimes we work with Paralympians, for example. So if we know we have people with a visual impairment, we still will use some visuals, but we want to make sure there's maybe a tactile nature to them. So for some of those clients, we'll change the way that we use visuals so that everyone feels that they can have a part of the experience. But when I think of visuals now, again, I do still think of there's some drawing on flip charts, but sometimes people come in and it's name tags that are written for people. So we use the lettering that we learned from Heather Martinez. So Let's Letter Together is her website. So they come into the room and they have a beautiful, not as beautiful as Heather would do, but to my best ability.
There's no judgment here.
Sort of a handwritten name tag that isn't a standard name tag that they would usually get. And then they choose their spot in the room maybe, and they take a name card that also has their name on it. So we bring those, simple lettering elements into a room, and you hear people whispering and there's a little bit of a buzz. And the other interesting piece is it levels a playing field. And that's something that I've learned that graphics do. We're preparing for a session in a couple of weeks where we've got medical doctors in the room, we have PhDs, and we have people that are feeling very much outside of a medical system, people with lived experience. And we're very conscious about using visuals so that that group of people feels like they are the exact same as people that are medical doctors. And name tags is the way that we do it. Everyone is just going to have their first name. We won't be able to tell who's who from their name tags. It's equal and it's inviting. So having a fun little multicolored name tag or a name tag with a drop shadow. So such a simple thing like that doesn't take me a lot of time, that I feel sets the stage for we're all equal here and we're all welcome and invited to partake in this conversation.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, the equalizing nature of it. But it also helps a group feel that it's going to be a fun experience, maybe a different experience that they've had before. I love stuff like that, where you either in the pre-communication or in the session itself, they walk in and go, oh, something's different here. It's going to be a different kind of session.
Yes. When we're setting up a room, we usually get into a room an hour before. And I think that's kind of a standard practice for facilitators. We think in terms of what do people need to see to experience this is going to be different, not to overwhelm people, but we might have our 3 big discussion questions on the wall. So if they didn't have a chance to look at an agenda, they can see. So we try to use the room to tell a story of what's going to happen. But the second thing we also try to do is we save some fun stuff so that it's not you come in and it's this overwhelming, graphic visual piece. We want to maybe have name tags, and maybe we're going to save the agenda. We just have a plain welcome flip chart that's in the languages that we'll be using in the room. We might have, if there's other languages spoken, we might say hello in different languages on a simple black piece of paper. And then once the meeting starts, we might remove that black piece of paper and then you can see an agenda. So it gives a moment of we're all experiencing a graphic agenda together, but we did see what the questions were because of the way you set the room up. So it's a combination of seeing it immediately and saving it till halfway through. To graphic facilitators sometimes talk about surprise and delight. So it's saving some of the things for later as well.
Yeah, but not overwhelming. Because I could imagine that some groups, you work with a wide range of groups, it sounds like, but some groups, I bet, or individuals come into the room and go, what the heck? What is, and it's sort of a bad thing. It could be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's, a corny factor. It's like, oh my goodness, we've got a whole day and it's just going to be all of this, silliness and games and icebreakers. And I'm saying icebreakers in a way, we do icebreakers. We call them content or connectors, content breakers or connectors. So we like to be very purposeful with all the things we're putting in the room. And we know that it's not everybody's cup of tea. So we're trying to invite them in gradually, see that it's purposeful. Even if there's an element of play, we're trying to connect it to the outcomes of the conversation or ensuring that we're setting a safe spot, safe place for people. So there's always intention with the visuals that we're choosing as well.
Yeah, so important. You're not saying that we just do this because it's pretty or it's fun, or always connects back to, you know why I named the podcast Facilitating on Purpose.
Yes.
I mean, it's stuff like this, right? We don't use visuals just for the fun of it, do we? There's a purpose, there's an intention there, as you've said. Yeah.
Exactly. And back to purpose of inviting people in is something that we talked about, leveling the playing field, and that notion of engagement. So people are engaged in the content. They're more likely to contribute in a way that feels safe for them. So it might not be verbally, it might be through a drawing or something else. And then it helps to clarify outcomes. So whether it's writing down the next steps or we've seen them on the wall as we're drawing, from today, these are the 3 things that we're going to do. So the clarity in the meeting room is happening, and the clarity for what's coming next is also happening as a result of the visuals.
Okay, yeah, that's good to know. Can I go back to the piece you mentioned about the tactile nature with the Paralympians? Because I've been holding that in my brain because I didn't want to forget that thread, because I did want to ask you about the accessibility of using visuals. Can you tell me what it looks like? Is there an example that you can share around that tactile piece that you bring in is it an option or a choice within the visuals use?
Yeah, so it might be clay on the table. So instead of post-it note and write something, it might be sculpt something so something that you're bringing today. How are you feeling today? Sculpt something. And so it's, simple clay that we can create. And I would invite everyone to use the same modality so that everyone, it feels again like a level playing field. So that's one piece in terms of tactile. Other things, though, that we think of in terms of accessibility, and I'll use that Paralympic group because some people are using manual wheelchairs, some people are using power wheelchairs. So we're conscious about if we're getting people to move around the room, we use words like move. We don't say walk over to or get up and walk to. So we try to be conscious in our language. So we're inviting you to move to a space in the room, to a starting flip chart, for example. We try to ensure the flip charts then are at a height that everyone can be a scribe. So they're lower than if everyone was ambulatory. Again, so when people come in, they don't think, oh, this room wasn't set up for me in mind. So we're careful about, are there cords where people with a visual impairment could trip? Anyone can trip over a cord. People with a visual impairment, wouldn't anticipate that. People that have backpacks lined along the side of a room. So we try to put backpacks under the table. So basic risk management to ensure that when we're moving a group, that they can do it safely and that they feel, again, that it's a room that's built with them in mind. It's built for
Yeah.
their participation in mind.
That's great to hear. I mean, some of us wouldn't work with people in wheelchairs maybe almost ever. And so those, even just knowing and remembering that, yeah, flip charts have different settings and we can and should use them. So thanks for mentioning that. Yeah.
Yes.
You mentioned visually impaired individuals. So what if you had someone who's visually impaired or blind? Does it change the way you prepare for or design the experience with visuals? Sometimes you would know that there's someone who's blind that's there, but sometimes you might not. What do you do kind of before and during if you have particularly people who can't see?
Yeah, so it's always helpful to know in advance, as you say. It's something I've learned through working again with Paralympians is there are different levels and different types of visual impairment. So some people can read if the font is very large. So for example, on a handout, but we would be told in advance by the people. We ask, how can we prepare so that it feels accessible? Some people, they're writing in a 24-point font and then they can read it. Other people are completely blind, so they can't see color or shape or light. So we know that we're going to rely on auditory more in those rooms. And we build in time in our design to read things out for people and to reorient them. So it's, kind of imagining, I would take time, even though people have name tags. If I have people with a visual impairment in the room, I will let everyone introduce themselves in order around the table so that that person kind of orients or associates a voice to a name if they haven't met people before. And then in that setting, also another design change is I might not move the groups around as much because that person has kind of got the orientation of the 20 people in a hollow square, for example. So a few simple things. A couple of other thoughts about that visual impairment piece. It's making sure the documents are accessible. So people have different readers that they use on their computer. So sometimes, it's maybe they can read the PowerPoint and not the notes. So again, it's asking individuals, how can I share the pre-reading with you in a way that you can take them in? So some people will have headsets in a meeting so that they're reading things at the same time, which, is just helpful for me as a facilitator to know it's this format or it's this size that you need. And another piece that I've learned from working with those groups of people is it's useful for everybody to remind people where we've come, to use people's name, to invite them into the conversation. So it's often elevates everybody's ability to participate and recall that the steps that we've had. Oh, we're coming back after lunch. You've just reminded me these are the 3 things we've talked about. this is the next thing. So I'd consider it really best practice facilitation that ensures it's accessible for everybody.
Yeah, yeah, such an important universal design for learning concept. Absolutely. Yeah. And it makes
Yes.
me think what you said about the getting people to introduce themselves in order. I'm making a motion with my finger in a circle here that, if we get people to introduce themselves in the circle, then that individual who's visually impaired can have that. They're creating basically a visual or maybe an auditory map in their mind, aren't they, when you're doing that? But actually, probably most of us do that, even if we can see people sitting there. So visuals can be, it's not just like stuff that we draw or have, right? It's like stuff we do with the mind, right?
Yes. Yes. I'm a sighted person. I can't always see someone's name card from where I'm seated. There could have a water jug in front of them. So that introduction, and I'm making that associate. Okay, the back corner, that's where person X is sitting and person Y. So you're exactly right. It's a mental map to build familiarity. And the more familiar I feel, it increases my comfort and my safety. And then the likelihood of me contributing, I think, increases as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We just want people to feel like they belong in the room and then feel comfortable to
Mhm.
participate. Yeah, that's why we want them to participate. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the virtual world as well. What have you done? I mean, you probably were working way before the pandemic hit as well online. I don't know. Did you make shifts at that time too to bring visuals in as you learned more and brought more visuals into your practice?
Yeah, I didn't early on, not as much as I should have. It didn't occur to me. I had one client that was using Zoom in 2018, 2019, and I always was nervous about it. The same way we all felt like to make sure, oh my gosh, I want to make sure all the screens are right. And how do I click the thing? And where's my speech box? All those nerves that I experienced as well in 2020 again. But I used to experience those around those early Zoom meetings in 2018, 2019. And I was just felt like I was gripping on and making sure I could get through my agenda. Again, through learning from people that do it so well and people that are generous with their skills and expertise, I've learned to, lighten the grip on the agenda, to bring in more visuals, to make it feel like there's an element of surprise and delight in those virtual settings as well.
Can you name some examples? What are some of the things that, if you just think of the last year, are there things that come to mind about how you've used visuals in you're mostly facilitating in Zoom?
Yes, Zoom, sometimes it's Teams, depending on what the client wants. So sometimes I'll invite people, and as people are coming into the virtual room, I'll say, have a pen and paper handy. We'll be inviting you to write some things or draw some things. You can feel the eye rolls, even if people have cameras off. But sometimes it's as simple as, okay, everyone, welcome. I just want you to draw how you're feeling today. And I'll model that by just drawing a really simple, smiley face. And I put it up to the camera to show, we're not looking at art that could be put in the National Gallery. It's a stick figure. So I'm telling people we're going to be inviting you to draw, and I'm setting the expectation low by showing this is my drawing. And I make sure intentionally that it's not a good circle, that it's kind of, has the lines going a little bit squiggly or whatever it is. So that's a really simple one, is draw something to how you're showing up, how you're feeling. Another really simple one, if we've got a big group and maybe we've got a panel of speakers, I might just have a time card that I hold up with a clock on it. So it's simple. It's not me interrupting a speaker. So I would just show time's up or please wrap up. So discreet, respectful, I'll have shown them that in advance, but not usually what people expect. It's usually an auditory cue to say the session's up. And then it's using visuals the same way, whether it's using polling through whatever the platform is that you're using, or other platforms. Digital whiteboards, we use them a ton, where we're putting post-it notes for people, they're putting post-it notes, they're doing sorting. So that's important to me, that it also feels that we're using tools in a way that's intentional and helps us get to our end product quickly, even online.
Yeah. I like that you mentioned the analog way of using visuals because, people can't see what you're doing, but I know you're literally showing that you would draw the thing and show it in front of the camera with your hands. So it helps people realize it doesn't have to be digital, and it's more accessible that way to us all as well.
Yeah. And then the notion of expanding beyond drawings is I get people to do 5-finger voting For example, are we ready to move on? 5 is absolutely, 1 is I want to talk about this some more. So everybody does a fist of 5 voting, or thumbs up if you're satisfied, thumbs down if you want to spend more time talking. So that's, again, it's a visual, it's, kinesthetic as well. We're getting people to engage that way. So not everybody maybe has their reaction, their toolbar open at the bottom to click a reaction, yes, no, but they can, often it's easier for people to do thumbs up or thumbs down.
I know. Yeah, especially when Zoom changes the location of stuff. I know I was just struggling yesterday to find, okay, where's the away thing? Because I had to go and drop my daughter off at school during a free session that I was attending. So I'm like, oh my gosh, like, wait, do I click on that and then the thing opens? Because they change it. And even
Yes.
don't know where things are.
Yeah. And it's flustering because you just want to do something quickly. And then it's like, oh my goodness, now I can't find it. Now I've,
Yeah. And it shouldn't take 4 minutes to just put a hand raise or a thumbs up.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, a lot of it is the things that we do as facilitators, isn't it? To be visual facilitators in the rooms that we're facilitating in. But what about the work that participants doing? I think you touched on this just briefly, but like, what have you gotten people to do themselves, whether it's drawing or another type of activity where you're encouraging them or asking them to do something visual?
One really simple one, and I think I almost didn't do it because I thought, no, this is too simple. I didn't think it was corny, but I thought it's not going to add the visual impact that I want it to have. So I cut out arrows. So really simple. Maybe they were red construction paper. Everyone got 10 arrows, and we had 10 items on their strategic plan. So everyone in the room had the same number of supplies. So they had some tape and their arrows. So beside each of the 10 items, they would put an arrow facing up if they wanted more of this, or continued sideways if it was like, not maybe just status quo, or arrow down if they wanted to decrease the level of focus on that. So very simple. Everyone moved around the room. They could talk to their colleagues, but they had their own arrows to place up. Instantly, as soon as we finished, we could instantly see what the pattern was of where were the up arrows kind of focused, where were the downs. There were some that were very divided. Half the group said up, half the group said down. So without anyone really talking or debating, without the president of the organization or the longstanding executive director, even new board members had the same amount of power because they had that same 10 pack of arrows as everybody else. And we talked about that piece as well. If you're new to the board, we still want to hear your thoughts on this. If this is your third term, we'd love to hear your perspective, having 3 terms of experience on the board. But again, super simple, accessible, didn't take a lot of explaining for people. It was a single shape, so I didn't have to get into a complex set of, you got this color means this color means something else, that this is another shape. It was all a single shape that they could use in whichever direction for meaning and impact.
I love that. And you said it's accessible because the dot voting, which it's basically dot voting, but it's not dot voting because it's arrows. It solves the problem that we so often would use when using dots, is that only the dots are in 3 colors, but if people can't see color, then what are they going to do with that? But arrows, I mean, as long as you can see arrows in which direction it's going. I love that because it just solves that problem. It wouldn't work in every situation because not everything is sort of an up or down vote or sideways vote, but yeah, definitely accessible for the use you've mentioned.
Yeah. And then another really simple one is we might have a scale taped on a wall. So we'll just put a simple piece of tape. We'll put hash marks for 1 to 10, and everybody has the same symbol, whatever the symbol is. It could be the logo of the organization or something that, again, has some meaning. So place on this number chart the extent that you feel we should be doing X, or how well do you feel that we're doing at Y. So simple, everyone gets to put their piece of paper or, their little card on the wall. And maybe there's 3 questions that we're asking. How well do you feel we're doing at this on a 10-point scale? You can imagine other questions that would have a 10-point grading. And that's our icebreaker then. Maybe they're talking with their elbow partner and then moving to the wall to place their piece. And we have this instant visual backdrop. You could do it as an opening exercise. How confident are you feeling in the day and what we've got to accomplish? And at the very end, how satisfied do you feel with our output? And they might be side by side on a wall, the check-in wall and the check-out wall.
Yeah, that's nice. And it gets people up out of their seats as well in that in-person room, which is always something, especially in the afternoon. We're always trying to figure out a way to get them up and doing something, right? So
Yes.
just a natural way to force that.
Yeah, and I just have to give a shout out to my roots. So my undergrad is in kinesiology. The profs, even back then did a great job of incorporating movement into classrooms. So whether we were in the middle of an exercise physiology, there would be some movement, even if it wasn't in the lab, in the big lecture halls. I feel that they recognized a lot of us were varsity athletes, or, movement was really a core need for all of us. And I've woven that piece into the work that I do. So I do have intentional stand up breaks or movement as appropriate to the group to feel like we're not just sitting in a chair consuming the information, that we're co-creating and moving in the space.
That's so amazing. And I'm constantly fascinated by what journey people have taken to get to facilitation, and the fact that you came from kinesiology and that you have that already as part of your toolbox, so to speak. I love that, because how many times have we just seen people just sit in the same seat, whether it's virtual or in person, and no movement. And our brains don't like that. Our bodies don't like that.
Yeah. I feel also that I've learned that facilitation, like many things, is a team sport. So, much like the sports I played growing up, we all in the room have a role to play. Mine might be holding a marker for this portion of the meeting, but we're all going to play our roles, and we all have something to contribute to get to our collective outcome.
Okay, so let's talk about your team again, because you're leading a biggish team, and we're talking about visuals. So have you learned things from your team that relate to visual facilitation? Have they expanded your skill set or your knowledge in this way? How does that interplay look around learning together about visuals?
So I've had the privilege of attending some workshops with members of the team, which has been great. And when we have our team retreats, we're fortunate enough to get together in the summer sometimes on a lakeside, and we build in time to be drawing and practicing and doing some of those icons together. So we do co-learn in those settings. And also we play to each other's strengths. So we have somebody on our team, Joe Van Ryn, is very artistic. So he might create a visual flip chart for us before we get into the room. So we're tapping into a skill that he has, and then the room gets to benefit from that. Whereas other members of the team are comfortable with live scribing. So in a room, they might be live scribing in a way that doesn't feel like the way I used to write on a flip chart, kind of black squiggly marks on a sheet. They're quite careful with their lettering. They do some interesting things with containers or placement or those kind of things. But yeah, it's getting to learn together and then getting to leverage each other's skills when we're in a room together as well.
And what you've just said there, I think it just drives the point home. If people are really, really new to all of this who are listening, that there are some things that we or you do before the session, and you create those and bring them in. And then there are other things, as you've said, that are live and done in the moment. So we definitely have both of those types of things that we can draw on, right?
Yeah. And to build on that, all facilitators will talk about the amount of work and prep they do before they get into the room. I think it's an ongoing inside joke with facilitators when clients say, no, I don't want all that prep stuff. I just want you to come into the room and do that thing that you do. And, we all know that it's all the thinking and planning and intentionality that allows us to. So for sure with visuals, we think about, is there a way to associate color? So we work in the sports space. If we're talking about podium performances, we use yellow paper because gold medals. And if we're talking about grassroots, we use green paper because that's grassroots. So just some simple pieces like that. If we're talking about what are you passionate about, we would use pink. So it's using color, being intentional that way is also makes it easier for people to connect. But the last piece just to mention about the prep that we do. So sometimes we draw a blank template just using black marker. And in the room, we'll just add some simple shadowing. So that was a way that some team members felt like, okay, I'm not ready to draw in front of a group yet, but I can add some simple highlight color. And it's like this magic experience the first time people see this simple adding of color and shadowing to a flip chart.
Okay, yeah, so that's a good entry point. Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned the time it takes because I too have been that person to lay out the huge chart paper on my dining room table or sometimes the floor, although my back doesn't like that as much. But it takes time to create that template. Even if we're just doing little, like I see in the background of your window here, you've got just like three little people sitting in a hot air balloon. It's like literally three circle heads and like an oval body. But even if we do just our simple icons like that, it takes time to think through how to do that. And we need to get paid for that, don't we, from our clients?
Yes. So it's having the icon library. So again, Bikablo was the one that taught me it's representative. It doesn't have to be a perfect sketch. So my people are literally two lines. It's a half oval and a circle for the head. And that gives me enough. Sometimes they have stick arms if they're jumping, but it's making some of these visuals accessible. But yes, to your point, it does take time. Even the learning takes time, the application takes time, but it's all part of that prep work that facilitators are so familiar with before you get into the room.
Yeah. Can I ask you about visuals across cultures? Because I know you've worked globally, and I wonder if you've ever been surprised or thought of something just a little bit differently, versus your work, say here in, I mean, all of our groups are always diverse, but you know what I mean? Like if there's something that hasn't translated well using visuals across culture, is there anything that comes to mind?
The thing that I'm careful about in cross-cultural is using examples that resonate with me as a Canadian. So I try to get the group to come up with examples or the client to come up with examples. I can't think of a time. My visuals are quite simple. So I'm just trying to think if I've been at a meeting because we have done things in other contexts. Nothing comes to mind.
And you can say, when they really resonated as well. Like if there's something that, okay, this really worked because we used visuals. Is there anything there?
Yeah. So I'll give an example. We had the opportunity to do a session with a global team. So there are about 70 people in the room. So many first languages coming into the room. And then we brought our English. So the meeting was in English. That was people's, in some cases, third or fourth language. Even though we were all using the same language, my pronunciation as a Canadian was much different than other people's pronunciation. So there is still a language barrier. Humor doesn't always translate, but visuals, we felt in that meeting were an elevator. So it was a 4-day session. We had a giant, a very long, sort of skinny flip chart. So imagine a flip chart, 3 stacked on top of each other. So it was floor to ceiling. And we had a giant pathway colored in the color of the organization. And we had written down day 1, this is what we're doing. Day 2, we were a little further down the path. Day 3, day 4. And so the clients or the people in the room got to see where we were on the map, and we would check off where we were within each day. So a simple visual that was the agenda allowed people to track where we were. And again, we relied on so many of the visuals that we do is co-creating affinity diagrams or people at a table coming up with their top 2 ideas and adding them to the wall, etc. Different regions got to work together, and we used a combination of words and pictures on all of the flip charts that they were creating. So I felt really important to help everyone understand and access the information quickly. They're clearly all experts in the field. It was just, if they couldn't understand my Canadian accent, I didn't want to disadvantage them from being engaged or participating.
Yeah, and it's a broadened invitation. I mean, how often do, those of us who facilitate, we say you can use words and pictures on the flip chart. We always forget, right? The pictures, some of us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So even more important with an international or cross-cultural group. I like that a lot. Yeah. You mentioned at the beginning mentors in the field, just, as you grew in your skills as a facilitator, but maybe visual facilitation. You've mentioned a couple already. Is there anyone else that you really want to put a shout out to that you've learned from in this particular aspect?
Yeah, so Lida Currie, who's South African, is fantastic. So she's somebody that I love following her work. Again, very generous with on what she shares. I feel I've got so many. I'm almost hesitant to start naming people, but Rosanna von Sacken has been somebody, a fellow Canadian who lives in BC, was one of the early people that I saw sketchnoting at a conference. And again, it was like, what is that gorgeous way of capturing notes? And she's a gifted artist, but again, a very generous teacher. And I've had some one-on-one coaching from her that's been very helpful as well.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I know Rosanna. She's in my facilitators group. And as soon as you said lettering and talked about Heather, I thought about Rosanna because she teaches lettering as well.
Yes. And she, I think, has also learned from Heather.
Okay.
So there's
that's good.
A connection there as well.
Anything else that you want to remark on that's been pivotal for you in your journey around visuals?
Yeah, there's just one other piece, and it was something that recently came up on my feed. Lisa Rothstein, who has spent some of her career as a New York Times cartoonist, she talks about AI in visuals and how people's expectation of visuals, now that we have AI as our drawing partner, that they're elevated significantly. So people come in with slideshows that are really polished. And her reminder is, and she talks about the art of strategic imperfection. So she, who's made a living as a cartoonist, doesn't want the artwork to look perfect. So when I hear somebody who's so accomplished like she is, it reminds me my simple stick drawing is sufficient to get a point across. So it just makes it feel more accessible and human. And that's how we're going to connect in meetings, that humanness. So it doesn't have to be beautiful. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's a way of leveling the playing field and inviting people in.
Yeah. And it's maybe a trap to think, oh, well, because AI exists and it does do visuals for us, then we really should load our PowerPoints up with them. And first of all, maybe not a PowerPoint always. Is kind of, I could go on, I won't.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, I love it. We don't draw something. We don't need to use AI for visuals. And there are other ways, as you've given us so many different examples, to pull the visual element in.
Yeah.
I think as we just start to close the episode together, there's one thing I want to ask you about. You've got something coming up where you're going to learn a little bit more about visual facilitation. Are you willing to share that with everybody so they know this other resource?
Yes. So Sam Brad, BC-based graphic recorder. I have the privilege of getting to be in the room with Sam in a couple of weeks. He'll be visually recording the session and then has a weekend workshop where me and a member of our team both get to participate. So small groups of 8 people. And I can't wait to be on Granville Island for a few days learning from Sam. So has introductory courses, has advanced courses, has online courses. So there's just so many gems in our, in globally, but lucky to have Sam here in our Canadian context and looking forward to watching while we're in the room, but being a participant in a workshop as well.
That's so fantastic. I interviewed Sam when I wrote my book, and I was signed up to go and learn with him as well. But it was the year the pandemic hit, and then it got canceled. So now you're reminding me, okay, I got to look up what he's doing now and see if there's something, because that just, if anyone knows Granville Island, it is a lovely place to go and learn about visuals for a few days.
So Sam's website is Drawing Change. So check that out if that's something that's of interest, and has online sessions as well. So you don't have to travel to beautiful British Columbia if that doesn't feel like a fit, but it's a great excuse to visit Canada's West Coast.
Absolutely. Come on over, everybody. We're here. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and for naming all these folks too that everyone can check out. And if they want to, start or continue their own journey, there's so many people out there to learn from, and including you. So thank you so much for chatting with me.
Thanks so much, Beth. Great to chat. Really appreciate your time.
It was so great to be able to have this conversation with Nora on the show. I'm so happy that I finally got a chance to address the issue and topic of visual facilitation, because I've been thinking about it for a while. It has been part of my own work, as you might have gleaned from listening to the episode. And I can't believe that it's taken me 73 episodes to be able to present this topic to you. I don't know why that is. There are just so many things that we can talk about around our work in facilitation. And I'm so happy that Nora came along to share her wisdom with us on this particular one. It was really interesting to hear Nora talk about her work in visual facilitation in so many ways, but a couple that stand out to me now that I listen back to it. She talked about co-learning with her team, and she talked about co-creating with participants. And those were such great concepts to bring forward, because if we think about ourselves and maybe some of the doubts or struggles we might have in thinking about how to use visuals in our own practice, we can remember that there are people who can support us in this. We can work with our teams, we can work with our co-facilitators, and we can actually co-create things with participants as well. So don't worry about trying to be an expert in this as you start to integrate it into your practice, because we're all on the journey of how to do this. And this co-learning, co-creation kind of concept is something great to keep in mind as you think about how to do this more and get supported at the same time. I also liked that Nora talked about releasing the need to be perfect in the work. If you actually go and look at the Instagram post that I shared of a screenshot of Nora and I having the conversation, you can actually see the flip chart that she had in the background of her Zoom window when we were chatting. And you can see how simple the visuals are in the flip chart that she has there. As she said, it's a circle and an oval, and that makes a person. And so it doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't have to look like an architectural drawing or an artistic rendition of a person, whatever it is, or whatever the icon is that you're making. So go look at that Instagram post and you'll see the types of things that we're talking about if using visuals is very, very new to you. If you've been doing this for a while, you know exactly what we mean when we talk about using simple icons that anyone can draw. And I hope you resonated with the things that Nora said in the episode. I know I sure did. Thank you so much again to Nora Sheffe for joining me and having this great conversation about using visuals in facilitation. Coming up on the podcast, I chat with Alina Pete. Alina is a Nahiyao or Cree artist and writer from Little Pine First Nation in western Saskatchewan, but they now live and work on the unceded lands of the Kwantlen, Musqueam, Katsi, Semiahmoo, Swasin, Kakite, and Coquitlam peoples. Alina is a multidisciplinary creator. They work in comics, animation, VFX, and VR. I'm really excited to bring this conversation to you because Alina and I talk about using art and story in learning. Please join us then. Thank you so much for listening. You can find the show notes for the show at facilitatingonpurpose.ca. Feel free to reach out to me about any episode to share feedback, and please do share it with a friend or a colleague who you think might enjoy it too. Thanks as always to Mary Chan for her fantastic editing support on this and every episode. See you next time.